September 26th, 1983. In the middle of the night, deep inside a Soviet bunker, an alarm started screaming. Not quietly, not subtly. The kind of alarm that says, "This is it." On the screen in front of him, one word appeared. Launch. The system was clear. The United States had fired nuclear missiles. And his job? Simple. Report it. Because if he did, the Soviet Union would respond. And within minutes, millions of people could be gone. No pressure, just the end of the world. His name was Stanislav Petrov, and this is a story of a man who may have saved the world. By doing something almost unthinkable, he hesitated. The world we lived in. To understand this moment, you need to understand the world we lived in. This was the Cold War, which, despite the name, wasn't cold at all. It was tense, it was paranoid, and one bad decision away from total destruction. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a silent standoff. Both sides armed with nuclear weapons, enough to destroy the planet multiple times over. Which, if you think about it, feels like overkill. And things were getting worse. Just weeks before that night, a civilian plane was shot down. Korean Airlines Flight 007. 269 people died. The world reacted. The United States was furious. The Soviet Union was defensive. And trust? Gone. At that point, everyone expected the worst. The question wasn't if something would happen, it was when. Now, Petrov wasn't on the front line. He wasn't in a tank. He wasn't flying a jet. He was sitting in a bunker, watching screens. Which doesn't sound dramatic until you realize those screens controlled the fate of the world. His role was to monitor a brand new system, an early warning network, satellites scanning the Earth, looking for missile launches. If missiles were detected, an alert would trigger, and that alert would move fast, very fast, straight up the chain of command. No meetings, no debates, just decisions. Because in nuclear war, you don't get time to think. You get minutes. The alarm. Then, just after midnight, it happened. The alarm went off. Loud, sharp, relentless. Petrov looked at the screen. Launch detected. One missile, then another, then another, then another, then another. 5 missiles. 5 nuclear missiles heading towards the Soviet Union. This was it. The moment everyone feared. The expected action. The system said it was real. The protocol said report it immediately. No hesitation, no second guessing, because once reported, retaliation would begin. And from that point on, there's no pause button. There's no undo. There's just consequences. The doubt begins. But Petrov didn't move. He stared at the screen, and something didn't feel right. No music, no dramatic speech, just a man looking at a screen, thinking. And that thinking changed everything. the questions. He started asking himself, if this was a real nuclear attack, why only 5 missiles? Why not hundreds? Why not everything? Because if you're staring at nuclear war, you don't send 5. You send everything. Then he thought about the system. It was new, not fully tested. There had been some doubts. And something else. There was no confirmation from the ground radar. If missiles were actually incoming, shouldn't they have already been visible? But they weren't. The pressure. The room was tense, alarms still sounding away. The officers watching him, waiting, because this decision was his. He could follow protocol, report the attack, trigger retaliation, or trust his instinct and risk being completely wrong. And if he was wrong, it wouldn't just be his career, it would be everything. The decision. So he made a choice. Not based on orders, not based on fear, but based on judgment. He decided it was a false alarm, and he reported it that way. No escalation, no retaliation, just a pause. The longest wait. Then came the waiting, because if he was wrong, there'd be no fixing it. Missiles would arrive within minutes. So they waited. Silence, tension, eyes locked on their system. And then, nothing. No explosions, no impact, no war. The truth. The system had made a mistake. It had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds for missile launches. A glitch? A misunderstanding? A tiny error? That could have ended everything. That could have ended everything. Aftermath? Petrov was right. But he wasn't celebrated. He wasn't promoted. He wasn't praised. Because he didn't follow protocol. He didn't trust the system. And in that environment, that mattered more than being right. So the story stayed hidden for years. No headlines, no recognition. Just a man who finished his shift and went home. If we reflect, no one cheered, no one clapped, no one even knew. But that night, the world kept going, because one person took a moment to think. And maybe that's part that matters most. That's the part that truly needs to be celebrated. It wasn't strength, it wasn't power, it wasn't technology, it was judgment, a calm, and the ability to pause. When everything tells you to react, sometimes the difference between everything ending and everything continuing is just one decision. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe, because there are more stories worth knowing. Thank you.